Hello folks, my name is Jetman, and today we'll be talking about installing cam chain tensioners and hopefully getting rid of your little rattling noise. We'll also discuss some important do's and don'ts. And you probably have heard this before, but a picture is worth 1,000 words, and on screen right now is the picture I'm talking about. And we'll go over that in a minute. There are manuals, videos that describe how to remove and replace the cam chain tensioners. However, I think there's a little room left for the installation information that you'll be receiving. The methods that I'll describe will make the install a lot easier, and I'll explain in detail via the displayed drawing and the associated parts plus a few photos. This subject matter is rather difficult to film due to the location of the components, namely the cam chain tensioners. This assumes you have a little bit of background in mechanics, such as we'll be doing. And it also will be describing some things that you'll need to pay attention on. The engine and the timing chains are not going to be removed. The car utilized here is a 1998 Ford Explorer with the 4.0 liter engine with a single overhead cam. And by the way, it has 142,000 miles on it. And I'm pleased to tell you, I had a successful install. I came up with these ideas because I thought it lent a better way of doing it, and I hope you agree with me. So let's start by, first of all, learning left and right what I'll be describing. We will be mentioning left and right quite often, and it is as if you and I are sitting in the car. Please keep that in mind when we bring up left and right. Let's start by draining the radiator and disconnect the battery. Next, we're going to remove the we're going to remove the fuel body and disconnect the spiral wire, which is the accelerator cable. You'll see it. And if you do have cruise control, leave it connected, as we will just set the entire fuel body with that cable off to the side. The other one is rather easy to get off. You just give it a half a turn and it comes right off. You'll see it's got electric, not electric, but it's got a woven wire, and that is the accelerator cable. So remove that one and set it off to the left side, if you would please. Remove the upper radiator hose in its entirety. And remove the alternator wires and the bracket associated with the wiring, and move the wire loom to the left side also. When I say the bracket, I'm going to see if I can produce a picture that will show you what we're talking about. This is the picture of the bracket. It's got a nut right here on the picture, on this body right here, which is a part of the casting for the alternator. So take this nut off the bracket and move that wire over to here, as you see right here. We've got to create enough room under this plenum chamber, which is the intake manifold. And what I did to jack up some of the pipes and stuff that were remaining to give me enough room to put the extension to my socket wrench in there. So what I did is I tied them up and just put a couple of wedges together and jacked it up. I also put some coffee stirrers under there to create a little more, how should I say, a little bigger bearing surface on that plenum chamber. I don't know how strong it is, but it is plastic, by the way. We will talk about that in a little bit. Now, we're going to start. The engine right now is incapable of starting because the fuel body is removed. If you doubt what I'm saying, put the cable back on, get in, turn it a couple times, if you don't see it starting, disconnect the cable again. We're gonna go over, after I explain this, we're gonna do the left side first now that we disabled the start feature. And I'd like you to be knowledgeable what we're gonna do. This is the camshaft right here. This is the upper part of the lobe. This is the lobe portion of the cam. You can see it's offset to the shaft. This is the cam heel. There is a don't that you don't want to do, and you don't want to try and insert this cam chain tensioner with this portion of the camshaft facing this opening. You're going to be robbed about 1/2 to 5/8 of an inch. So with that, this here is not the way it turns. It turns this way. But it's hard to explain all that without the picture. So this is what we're looking for, the heel of this facing this, and how do we get it there? Well, we go over to the battery and reconnect it. And you can have a friend connect it if you want. Take the starter motor, but I did this myself. Took the starter motor a couple times and found the heel. Now, what I did, I put together a little slide rule, cheap man's tool, so to speak. We're gonna measure what we're looking for is the deepest portion we can get this in. So right there, you can see I'm right on the surface of either the head or the engine block, depending on which case it is. And I'm right there. So I'm gonna turn the stick over right now. And what I'm gonna do is mark it. And then we're gonna turn the camshaft to the heel by taking the starter motor. And now we're gonna take and move our stick in, but this here is on the body. It can't go in the hole. It's 1 inch wide. The hole is a little shy of that. So we're gonna take our unit in a little bit. These are just a couple staples. It's pretty hard to get up, especially on this one on the right-hand side. You'll see where it is in a moment. It's a little difficult to get up there and maneuver these things around. You can take and push that in with your finger, turn it over, mark where it goes, and the difference is what you gained. It's roughly 1/2 inch to 5/8 of an inch. And keep in mind, this is not to scale. It is strictly a drawing to show you what's happening. Now, this is where we're gonna be when we get on the right side. So I'm gonna have you break the lug nuts on the wheel, jack the car up, remove the wheel. This is the upper A-arm of the steering mechanism right in here. Shows you where we are. This is the right rear spark plug insulator wire. This is, believe it or not, a cam tensioner. And while we're looking at it, they all have both cam chain tensioners on this automobile were the flat head, just like that, 1/1/16 inch. So we'll talk about that too before we even get going here. This is the inner wheel well thing, and attached to this is a rubber skirt, so to speak. And you're gonna undo the rear 2 clips. They're Teflon type clips. They're one-time use. You push them in, you can't pull them back out. They got like a fish hook on the other side. Stick a hacksaw blade between it and the other, wear a glove so you don't hurt yourself. And cut those in half, cut them off rather, and just fold this skirt over, this mud flap skirt. And this is what you'll see. Now, if I remember right, I didn't even need an universal joint on this, just a lot of extensions. And also, this tensioner gets, when we're finished putting it in, gets torqued to 60 foot-pounds. Now, I will tell you right now, I think they use some thread weld on it. That's a glue you can buy. You can buy it where it's removable and it's not removable. Well, they have the removable type on there, but it took about 90 foot-pounds to get that out. And I had to use an extension bar on my breaker bar. I had a 3-foot piece of 1.5-inch pipe on there to create 90 foot-pounds of torque on there. And it came right out. Once it breaks loose, you can go under there and unscrew it with your hand. It's not hard at all to do. Very easy once you get it done. So once we get that off, we're searching for the heel of the cam. Now that's going to allow us to take this cam tensioner and go in there and engage the threads without having to compress this. And while I got this in my hand, I'd like to point out something. This is the hole the oil will be looking for, and I'll talk about that momentarily. And there's a crush washer that comes with these. Be sure to put it on. And before you put this back in there, be sure to put a coat of oil, good coat of oil on it here and here. This is the hole that lubricates the cam chain tensioner to whatever it rubs up against. Some of them rub directly up against the cam. Some of them rub against the cassette, which is a mechanism to retain tension. It just holds that in against the cam chain. So, 1.1/16 socket, and it can be a regular depth socket. Now, the picture if you notice, has got this tower on it. This is the new replacement for the left side only. And I suspect it's got a longer plunger inside, which gives it a little more stability. It's an improvement. And you'll see that when I'll show you a picture of what it looks like installed. This is on the left side, and here you can see it installed right there. And it's on a little bit of an angle, so you see the picture tipped a little bit there. But this is the fuel body plenum where the fuel body bolts to, and we'll talk about that a little bit later too. But here's the hole it receives in. And if you look closely, you can see this bottom aperture opening here for where the bolt goes. It's a screw bolt. It's self-threading, and we'll talk about that one. But anyway, if you notice in this picture, there's about, I'd say probably 3/16 of an inch in here. And what happens is when this is installed with a washer and torqued up to 60 foot-pounds, this is pressurized oil in here. It's going to look for a place to go. Where's it going to go? It's going to go right in that hole right there. It's going to find it. It's going to find it almost instantly when you start up. Do not fill this thing with oil. Put a couple squirts of oil in it. That's it. You don't want to be compressing oil, because as you put this in, you're going to be compressing that, and the oil's going to come out anyway, because you haven't made contact with the sealing washer yet. Yet this hole is open. So as you compress it, the oil is going to pop back out. So you hear a lot of guys say, fill it up with oil and pump it. Please don't do that. You're just fighting the system that we're using. It will be fine. Anyway, that's how we do the right-hand side. And be sure to torque it to 60 foot-pounds. And I'm hoping this lends a little bit of clarity to why we're using something like this. You can just use a stick if you want to stick it into the heel of the cam till it touches and sort of go across. But on this right hand one, it's a little hard to get up there with a pencil. Your left hand and your right hand, you can get up there with one hand. And by the way, when you put this in by hand, you will see that you're going to be able to engage that threads, and you're going to be able to thread it in quite a ways. And then you'll have to use a wrench. These are very fine threads. In most instances, this is aluminum, the receiving threads, a lot of instances. So be careful, you don't want to cross thread it. Putting a big powerful wrench on it, or a power wrench, you don't want to do that. You want to get it in there, know that it's in there securely, and has engaged the threads. You're going to be able to make quite a few turns on it, quite frankly, with the heel of the cam facing the hole. So torque it up real tight. Close up your, put your protector flap back on, put your wheel on, bring the car back down very safely. Hopefully you used the jacks also under it when it was jacked up. And let's see here. Now we'll go over to the left side again with the fuel body, and we're going to attack that one and see if we can take care of it. Everything we're going to be doing from here forward, and this is the reason I brought you over to do the right one first. We can put the car back on the ground, and everything from here forward will be under the hood. So please keep that in mind. Now, let's see what else have I got here. Okay, we're gonna disconnect the battery again because we're gonna be moving wire looms around and wires, and there's no sense running into that. We don't wanna spark any wires. We got the upper radiator hose removed, and I'm gonna bring out a picture rather, and explain a few things. Like they say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. This is your thermostatic body. This has got to be removed in order to get out. Let me remove this. In order to get everything out. The cam tension on this one is right underneath this. So we got to come in with our extension and an 1.1/8" socket with a universal joint. And this socket, by the way, has got to be a deep socket because of the tower. If you get this new version with the tower on it, you are which is right here in this picture installed, you're going to have an 1.1/8" deep socket. 1.16" rather. I hope I didn't say an eighth. I think I did. Anyway, you can take these 3 nuts off and you'll see your thermostat right inside here. If you haven't replaced it in 3 or 4 years, I would think about doing that right now. You do not have to take this off, by the way, this thermostat cover, to get it out. But there are 3 bolts holding this whole. And this is all plastic, by the way. It holds this whole thing down, so I'm going to try and give you what you're going to see under the hood, under the plenum. The intake manifold, I call it a plenum. It depends on what the factory wants to call it. This faces to the right side. These 3 bolts right here, these 3 holes, are what holds this to the surface of the block. And this is the gasket that goes on the bottom. You see a brand new one installed here. And the reason for that, when I thought I may have to remove these, so I started unthreading them. And this one, when I unthreaded it, it just turned the whole thing, the threads and all, where they were fused in. So I said, I'll get a new one, and I put a new one on. But the thermostat is right there. I left the nuts off so I could show you. And it's easy to take out. And it only goes on one way, by the way. These are heat probes, electric heat probes. One goes to your gauge on the dashboard, and the other one goes to, I believe, the computer. I'm not sure on that. Now, you don't have to remove these. They'll come out. This tower right here, which has a hose on it connected to water, is just about as tall as this. So even if you took these out, I didn't realize at the time, you still have this to pull out from underneath there. And once you take the bolts, the nuts out rather, you're gonna be able to wiggle that right out of there. And now another trick that I came up with on this, right here, is a very difficult hose clamp. It's spring loaded. And what I did is I just put my vice grips on it, squeeze it and lock it, and let it sit there. And once you get these 3 bolts undone that I was telling you about, you're going to be able to lift that up out of there, and it will come right out of here. You might have to just break it loose a little bit with a little bit of pry, and it will come right out. Now, I'm going to give the install side of it right now while I'm talking about it and got it on my mind. To make your install easier, take and spread some liquid joy on here and also inside that hose. Just leave that pair of vice grips on there all the time you're working afterwards, and let it just rest up against this idler wheel right here that you see, this brown idler wheel. That will take care of that. And you'll find out with joy on there, that would be like putting a slipper on with a shoehorn. So you use the idea, it works. All these wires that you see that moved over to this side, they came off the alternator and down a little ways. There is another wire loom in here that stays here during the install, but you may have to lift it up or move it a little bit. If you find out, mine was real tight. There's no slack in these wires. They didn't waste any wire whatsoever. You have to take the nut off that holds the dipstick, the transmission dipstick. There's a bracket over on the right side, and it's got two heater pipes on it. You don't disconnect the heater pipes, you don't disturb them other than moving them. Once you get that bracket undone, there's two nuts on the inside of the engine. You got to take them off. Do not remove the dipstick holder or the dipstick. Just push it aside a little bit. You have to move that around to get in here with your extension for your socket wrench. So that's why I'm talking about that. And by the way, when you go to start this up, when we get it all back together, and I'll show you, you're going to find out it'll come alive real quickly. You don't have to prime it or anything. Don't think about putting any gas in the inlet or anything. You don't. These modern cars are not that way. The fuel body is, boom, almost instantaneous. Anyway, also, if you don't replace this body, be sure to get a new washer for the bottom. Put it in, make sure it's in there real solidly. It won't fall out. It's rather tight. It's got a little teeny lip on this ring around here on the plastic that grips this. So you can get in there and wiggle this around and get it back in. And you won't have to worry about that falling out. Now, I'm going to mention another thing to you. And I don't have the fuel body picture. I had it, I don't know what I did with it, but I'll explain this, and this will make it very clear. When you go to put this back together, the fuel body, let's assume we already got the tensioner in there. We've got it torqued to 60 foot-pounds. We put the oil on it. We put the washer on it. We feel pretty solid about it being in there properly. So now we're putting it back together. This is what holds the fuel body to the plenum or the intake manifold. It's a very coarse, it's got 6 threads to the inch, very coarse. These threads were made by a power tool when this came down the assembly line at the factory where they put the engine together. And it made its own threads. This little cut that you see in here is very sharp. If you try putting that together with a power tool, you're going to wipe out possibly the threads that are in there. Don't do that. Here's a way to reutilize the existing threads so you don't get yourself in trouble. You will get in trouble if you do it otherwise. 8mm socket. Go up to the hole with your thing. Turn it backwards. When you feel it get on the step, you're going to hear it go click. Stop right there. Reverse your direction of rotation, and you'll be seating this, and you'll be using the existing threads that the factory created. If you wipe these threads out with these screws, you're going to have a problem that can be a little bit of a process trying to get it resolved. Don't do that. Do it the other way. When you get all done, you can be proud. And let's see if I got anything else. By the way, my car came out, I would say, just about 100% without the banging around. I thought I had I was driving a beer can with a marble in it for a while, and it's quieted right down. I think you're going to have the same success. And also, let's see here if I got some. I think I covered every facet of it that I know. Oh, one other thing too. I use this company's product. They were very good. God, I got delivery like the next day from the auto parts store I ordered it from. And they were very nice. Anyway, they're the ones that have this new style tensioner. I recommend it. So it's made by Cloys, and they make timing devices. So you can go to them and get it. I'm going to give you the part number of both the right. This is the right here. Hopefully you can read that. 9-5586. Cam chain tensioner made by Cloys. Now, the extra long tensioner, let's see, this is for the right side, I'm sorry. And this is for the left side. Yeah, left front. 9-5587. Let me repeat that. 9-5587. If you have any trouble ordering that, you can get a hold of Cloys at cloys.com, cloyes.com. I found it very interesting working with them. Their parts were there very quickly, so that's what I like. Well, that just about wraps up what I've discovered. And by the way, when you put this all back together and start it up, there's some good news, and that is you're going to find out it's probably a little peppier than what it was. And that is due to your cam chain being running in retarded mode. In other words, it had slack and slop. That's what was creating the noise. And it was possibly running 2 to 4 degrees retarded on opening and closing the valves. The ignition timing, by the way, is taken off the front of the crankshaft, and the timing chains don't affect that. That will remain unchanged. Please keep these newfound horses in check and drive safely. This concludes our install, and I hope I was of assistance. Hope you have a great day and enjoy your ride. Take care.